Hi everyone, it's William. Welcome to the second episode of the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary and Correspondence series for 1939. We are working our way through the letter he wrote to his sister, dated 23rd of September, 1939, and he'd been at the sanatorium, Schatzalp, which is where I'm recording this, the tuberculosis sanatorium in Davos, Switzerland. He'd been there for a little over 3 weeks. So he'd started getting settled in. I have a selfie stick that has also a tripod feature. And I'm going to try to use that today so that I can move it around a little, unlike yesterday when I was stationary. I'm in the same place. I'll take this off in front of the sink that was used to clean spit receptacles, sputum receptacles. Because I'm here because Dmitri mentions that in this little part of the letter that I'm going to read today. But anyway, I can take advantage of the selfie stick to show you some more things. Let's see, this is one end of the corridor. You could see we have here the old, of course there's a newer one nearby, but the old fire hose. And then the rest of the corridor on the other side of me. So this is going towards the west. And yeah, I suppose some of you will be laughing and saying red rum, but this is a very nice positive place, and I have no compunctions at all about staying here completely alone. So yeah, not an issue. Now I've tried to make the text on my laptop screen as big as I can so that I'm not going to be ducking down to read it, but this is experimental anyway. Maybe actually this would be better. I'll just pick it up since I'm not moving. I can do that. Okay, so where did we stop yesterday? Well, I didn't have much time left since I'd been rambling about tuberculosis. So he had just all he'd talked about is that he'd finally decided to send her a letter, even knowing that it would probably take a long time to reach her, maybe 2 weeks, but he knew that he was still going to be at the sanatorium 2 weeks later, and that the war was still going to be going on 2 weeks later. And so he was settled enough at that point to decide to write her a letter. All right, so the last sentence that I read yesterday was, "I'll begin at the beginning," and so that's the sentence I'm going to start with today. I'll begin at the beginning! Exclamation point. You have no idea how terrible I felt during those last few days in Paris and the last 2 weeks in Torquay. But I tried as much as possible to conceal it. I hope I wasn't too unsuccessful. It was only at night when I was alone that I got scared. I got scared is underlined, and couldn't help feeling sorry for myself. The worst moment was when Polly left. I couldn't stop thinking about the possibility that I might never see him again. 2 exclamation points. Oddly, I was seized by the same feeling when the moment came for us to part from one another after dinner at poor Pauline's. It was worse, much worse, than what I had felt going off to war. A resolve came over me, resolute and strong, to do everything I could to pull through. But resolve is one thing, and going home every night to hack up, forgive me, in parentheses, rotten, stinking, and weirdly cadaverous pus is quite another. I was gripped by fear, exclamation point. That sentence is underlined. Fear that the time had come to lay down my fevered head, double exclamation point. And then again, that strange and blind feeling that the everlasting power of good will pull me through. Underline, if only I never leave for 1 second either to pump on it or let myself slip into a state of apathy and indifference, triple exclamation point. Something of this sort was put in my soul by the Hindu doctor, I am sure, exclamation point. There on the Red Sea, he uses almost as many exclamation points as I do, but with greater reason, I think. So before going further, I just want to point out where the English is in this part of the letter, because he does use English. He writes the phrase, which would be a recurring one for him, pull through. I'll do everything a resolve came over me to do everything I could to pull through. Most of that is in Russian, but to pull through is in English. Likewise, there's a paragraph in English that has this weird expression, to pump on it, which, unless there's some obscure, very obscure aspect of British English that I don't know about that has that phrase, then it's just, it's just his not having perfect understanding of English, perfect to the extent that a native speaker would. So that whole paragraph that goes, and then again, that strange and blind feeling that the everlasting power of good will pull me through. If only I never leave for 1 second, either to pump on it or let myself slip into a state of apathy and indifference. So what did he mean by pump on it? What did he mean by leave for 1 second? I think he means leaving his resolve, or giving up his resolve for even a second. Pump on it, I don't know. And then the concluding paragraph is also in English. Something of this sort was put in my soul by the Hindu doctor, I am sure. There on the Red Sea. Wow, so lots to talk about in this, really. I could have done this in smaller chunks. So he had been in Torquay, which is in England, to see his son, apparently. He'd spent 2 weeks there. And he had this premonition about Polly. The worst moment was when Polly left. So Polly was in boarding school in England at that time. And when Polly left, clearly to go back to school, that was the worst moment. Because he thought to himself, I might never see him again. And that, in fact, was sadly the truth. He never did see him again. We find out that he was trying to hide how sick he was. And it's kind of a shame that he did that, because Maria never quite believed that he really was as sick as, that he really was as desperately sick as he was. Apparently, he was pretty good at faking it. The poor man probably had no energy at all and a high fever, but he was doing his best to fake it. And then when he got home at night, and he was living in hotels at that time, and he was by himself, I got scared, he says, and couldn't help feeling sorry for myself. And I think, we can all forgive him for feeling sorry for himself under those circumstances. Being alone and not feeling like he could confide in people, even his sister, about how sick he was. And, getting a diagnosis of tuberculosis at that time was, pretty much similar to how anyone would feel nowadays getting a diagnosis of cancer. Maybe I'll survive, maybe I won't. But it's going to be a tough thing to fight. Okay, I don't know who Pauline is. Dmitri spells her name Pauleen, but my guess would be that since he spells things often phonetically, that it's probably Pauline, but I have no idea. So he had this feeling. He was at dinner with Pauline and with Maria, and he had this feeling it felt worse when he parted from his sister. It felt much worse than what he had felt in 1914, in August 1914, when his regiment had been mobilized, and they'd gone off to the front, to East Prussia, the invasion of East Prussia. So that's, that's pretty intense. That's pretty intense that he feels parting from his sister. He felt even worse than he'd felt going off to war. Then there's this sentence, which, forgive me, I should have given a trigger. Well, here I am using the same words Dmitri uses. Forgive me, I should have given a trigger alert. And throughout the diaries and letters from the sanatorium, there are going to be these instances where there are, ugly bodily things. And that was the nature of the disease. It's not like, the romanticized form of it where you just kind of, slowly waste away and look beautiful and angelic, and then you die. So one of the things that you do with pulmonary tuberculosis, one of the main things that you do is you are constantly bringing stuff up. And sometimes if you have actual cavities in your lungs where the bacilli have just eaten away and turned into the lung tissue and turned it into this kind of cheesy substance, and forgive me, you hack stuff up. And when Dmitri says it is cadaverous and it stinks, well, that was true. And he says that he'll tell us why in particular he was coughing up not just the stuff that the bacilli had done to his lungs, but also pus that was separately. So yeah, nasty stuff. And I'm sorry if that has upset anyone, but do be warned that there will be more of this sort of thing. Okay, I was gripped by fear, very understandable. Fear that the time had come to lay down my fevered head. So any of you who have been watching these videos ever since the 1906 diaries, when Dmitri was 14, know that he had this poetic side to him. When he says the time had come to lay down my fevered head, obviously he's talking about the time had come for me to die. And so naturally he was gripped by fear. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that the phrasing in the lay down my fevered head, okay, so it's not that, it's something that you hear elsewhere, but I think it's a specific allusion to something written by Chekhov, and I need to look into that more. Anyway, Dmitri had certainly read the big Russian authors. Okay, so then there's this interesting sentence about how, here he is really terrified, and then he has this peacefulness come over him, this strange and blind feeling that the everlasting power of good will pull me through. And so this goes back to, as I mentioned briefly in the previous video, this goes back to his study and his immersion into New Thought philosophy and some aspects of Hinduism when he was in Persia in 1917, having been banished from Russia by the Tsar and being very much, and then the revolution happening and having no idea what's going to happen to him in the future, having, very few resources, and being just a perpetual guest at the British legation. Well, he dived into this New Age, into these New Age texts. So there's one book that you could easily get cheaply on Amazon as an ebook called, what is it called? In Tune with the Infinite, by a man named Ralph Waldo Trine. And I'm not recommending it personally. I don't put down anybody who, like Dmitri himself, who gets benefit from the book. But personally, to me, it just seems stupid. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that, but it helped him, so I guess it wasn't stupid. It did help him at that time. And then another book that he read at that time was by Swami Vivekananda, who was, I think, the founder of the Vedanta movement, which is sort of, if I understand it correctly, because I have a couple friends who are Vedanta practitioners in Portland, Oregon, and they're very intellectual, and it seems like it's kind of a more abstract intellectual form of Hinduism. But anyway, Dmitri read Swami Vivekananda's book, called Raja Yoga, and it's not like instructions for doing yoga every day. It's more about the overall picture of this form of Hindu spirituality. And he read that book, and he took notes on that book, and he often quoted from In Tune with the Infinite. So when he refers to the everlasting power of good or the infinite, that comes from the New Thought philosophy. And, he's returned to that now in a moment of crisis. It had kind of receded from his life. And now he's returned to that again. And one of the things that kind of breaks my heart that I hope didn't really crush him is I've been rereading In Tune with the Infinite lately. And, it basically says that if you are doing the right thing spiritually, if you are, if you have a healthy mindset and are thinking positive thoughts, you will never get a disease. And if you do get a disease, well, basically it's your own fault. It's your own fault. And so hopefully Dmitri did not take that to heart. I don't know. Anyway, there's this reference to the Hindu doctor there on the Red Sea. So when he says doctor, does he mean a medical doctor that he went to consult? Well, possibly. He had medical doctors both in France and in England who had diagnosed the TB and given him the recommendation of Schatzalp, not only because it was the kind of luxury establishment that was suitable for a Grand Duke, but also because it had a world-renowned surgeon and doctor who was a specialist in TB, Gustav Maurer. So what was he doing on the Red Sea then, and what kind of doctor was this? Does he mean to say a guru or of some kind? And what country was it? Dmitri really liked Egypt. He was there in 1918, and when he was there, he'd even thought, wow, I could live here. So possibly it was Egypt. It could also have been Ethiopia, although that was a bit unsettled at the time because of what was going on with Italy. In Ethiopia, and so, but it could have been either place. His son had told me that he'd gone on some kind of sea cruise around that time, 1938, 1939. Paul didn't have the exact date, and it was a German vessel. And so today I spent about an hour trying to look for and it was the maiden voyage of this vessel, and I spent about an hour trying to look at all the German ships that were launched in 1938 or 1939. I haven't looked at 1937 yet, and if any of them called at any ports on the Red Sea, but yeah, I drew a blank. The AI response was, something akin to, no, there's this one that could be, but it didn't go to such and such any of these ports, and so on and so forth. And the AI really got flustered when I asked it to find gurus in Egypt or in Ethiopia. But I'm rambling as usual. So what we have next time? Next time, Dmitri is going to describe that last evening in Paris and his trip to Davos. So there won't be any particular location here at Schatzalp that's relevant to that because it's about his train journey. But if any of you want to read an interesting account, another interesting account from a much earlier time period of the train journey to Davos, in this instance starting not in Paris but in Hamburg, then there's Thomas Mann's famous novel, The Magic Mountain, that describes, will give you another perspective on that, and then we'll have Dimitri's tomorrow. And I've already gone 20 minutes, but I just want to say, I took a look today at the first diary entry in the 1915 diaries, and Dmitri was at that time, he was out in the countryside at his country estate near Ilinskaya. It was called Usovo, and it was the one that was used in the winter. And he was there because he was suffering from some kind of unknown illness, just complaining of very nonspecific symptoms, like sort of just strange weakness, as he would put it. And, you know, to me, it seems like 99% sure that it was PTSD from what had happened during the invasion of East Prussia and the horrible things that he'd seen as a participant in a regiment that was itself nearly destroyed. So, yeah, what was the point of bringing that up? The point of bringing that up is that it's a bit similar. That first month, that first January of 1915, is a bit similar to what we have with his arrival here at Schatzalp. So I think I'm going to, so right now we're at the end of September 1939, and I think when we get to January 1940, then it would be cool to do videos, back-to-back videos from both 1915, January 1915 and 1940. So if I'm able to do that, that's what I'm going to do. And yeah, I will, I guess, yeah, give you one more view of the long corridor here. You can see, I don't know how well you can see this clock, this big illuminated clock. And I think even when the lights were turned out in the corridors at night, the nurses could see what time it was. And they had the light from this big clock that almost looks like it belongs in a train station. It was made by the Siemens Corporation. Anyway, I will say goodbye, and thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.